Ukrainian authorities say Russian shelling during the night and in the early morning hours on Thursday have killed nearly a dozen people in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. The regional governor said at least 7 people were killed in Kharkiv's suburb of Saltivka. Rescue workers are still searching the rubble for more victims. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said the attack destroyed a block of flats and called it a cynical strike on civilians. Saltivka is a large district in the northeast of Kharkiv, close to the front line, and it is the target of Russian shelling nearly every day. The mayor of Kharkiv says 1,000 civilians in the city have died since the beginning of the war. Our reporter Brigitta Schülke was in Saltivka just days ago, before the latest round of attacks, and filed this report.
Wrecked shops, bombed out schools, no gas, no water. This used to be a vibrant neighborhood. Months of attacks, as the Russians tried to smash Kharkiv into submission, have left Saltivka district like this. Since the start of Russia's invasion, Saltivka has borne the brunt of Moscow's relentless shelling. We are told 90% of the inhabitants have fled. The neighborhood here certainly feels like a ghost town. It's often the weak and poor who remained, enduring months of attacks. Leonid and Tatiana Bosco are the only people still in their block. They miss how life used to be.
There were many children running around. It was fun living here.
Yes, we had many kindergartens and schools. Everything was there.
They are doing what they can to prepare for winter and use this basement to hide during air raid alarms. While we are down there, we hear shelling in the distance.
My biggest fear is still that the Russians could come. We can survive with no water, with no electricity. But this shooting, the rockets hitting us, that frightens me.
Despite the fear, life is slowly returning to Saltivka. Next door, workers fix water pipes for the least damaged apartments and patch up the smashed windows to prevent rain and snow making the damage worse. But they're not ready to start full renovation, a member of Kharkiv's housing committee tells me.
There is no sense in doing it now because the war is still going on. Kharkiv is being shelled every day. And if, for example, we were to replace the glass in the windows, it could even harm people in an attack.
But for Igor Sadoroshny, even basic repairs are a sign of hope. He invites us to his home. After weeks living in a metro station, he and his wife Olena are relieved to be back, even though they have no windows or running water.
We don't know what will happen in the winter. We hope there will be some heating, or we have to put more plastic in the windows.
Igor says he's lucky. He's still being paid as a professional football coach. He proudly shows us his team.
Half of them have gone abroad or are now in Western Ukraine. Only 6 of the kids have stayed here. I miss them so very much. I really hope they come back soon.
Until then, he and the others we met here in Saltivka will concentrate on surviving, hoping the front keeps being pushed further away, bracing for the coming winter.
Now, as Russia's shelling continues, Ukraine's President Zelenskyy is in Lviv to meet with UN Secretary-General Guterres and Turkish President Erdogan. They'll be discussing possibilities for a diplomatic solution to end the war. For more on that, I'm now joined by DW correspondent Matthias Böllinger in Lviv and DW's Julia Hahn is in Istanbul. Matthias, let's start with you. What's going to happen in Lviv today? What's on the agenda there?
So there are meetings between Erdogan and Zelenskyy and also Guterres, the General Secretary of the UN, and the General Secretary is then going to Odessa, the southern town where the ports are, where the grain exports are happening, and Erdogan will return to Turkey.
Julia, Turkey plays a critical role as a mediator in this war. What's Erdogan's strategy today for these talks?
Well, I think it's important to mention that this is actually the Turkish president's first visit to Ukraine since Russia invaded the country in February. So he will hold his first face-to-face talks with his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, today. Many or some have been saying that it's about time for Erdogan to finally visit Ukraine because he has already met with the Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, twice in recent months. Now, we know that Turkey is a NATO member, but Erdogan is also performing a delicate balancing act between the two sides where he supports Ukraine. He has provided the country with modern combat drones, but he's also carefully trying not to jeopardize his relations with the Kremlin. Turkey has not joined Western sanctions against Moscow. Erdogan himself says this is actually an advantage. It boosts his role as a mediator in this war because he's the only leader who can talk to both sides, and that's why he has been pushing for further steps to be taken into the direction of a diplomatic solution of peace talks. But I should also mention that in Western capitals, many are increasingly alarmed at Erdogan's deepening ties with Putin. So I think many eyes are going to be on these meetings today in Lviv.
Matthias, neither Ukraine nor Russia seem to be ready for a peace deal right now. Is a diplomatic solution realistic at all?
I don't think that's what we're talking about right now. A diplomatic solution would be possible if one of the sides would not see any chance of gaining more ground, or if one of the sides would see themselves in a position to really get through with their major demands. These demands are, of course, incompatible. Russia is basically demanding the capitulation of Ukraine, demanding a say in the future of the country, plus keeping these territories that they are now occupying. Ukraine is, of course, not ready to give away these territories, and I think no matter how much pressure there would be on a president of Ukraine to compromise on territorial integrity, I think it would be very difficult in this country to get such a deal through. People here are really opposed to that, and they see the goal for Russia to leave Ukraine alone and to remove their troops from Ukrainian soil. So these two things are incompatible. I could imagine that these talks are rather a path to opening more diplomatic channels to resolve some specific issues, like, for example, the situation around the nuclear plant in Zaporizhia, which is getting more and more delicate, which is getting more and more dangerous.
Julia, you mentioned earlier the grain deal, the agreement to enable grain shipments from Ukrainian ports. That was a big diplomatic success both for the UN and for Erdogan. Is that deal holding?
Well, it's definitely going to be on the agenda today, a main topic. It's been nearly a month now since that deal has been signed by Russia and Ukraine here in Istanbul. It's been hailed as a success by Turkey and the United Nations, who have brokered the agreement. And it is, in fact, the first major agreement reached in this war. Matthias just mentioned how difficult it is to take further steps for diplomatic efforts. Now, we have some figures actually there from the United Nations, and according to that, some 560,000 metric tons of grain and other agricultural products have been shipped out of Ukraine in the past 2 weeks to world markets on 21 authorized vessels. Now, Ukraine has a huge interest in speeding up this whole process to be able to export even more grain in the weeks to come. And I think this is going to be part of the message that we're going to hear in Lviv today from Mr. Guterres, Mr. Erdogan and Mr. Zelenskyy, that this deal, no matter how complicated and tricky it is actually working, and it might have created, in the most hopeful case, some momentum for further efforts and steps to be taken, diplomatic efforts to a political solution in this war.
DW correspondents Matthias Böllinger in Lviv and Julia Hahn in Istanbul. Thank you both very much.